Lucy, how are you?
I'm great, actually. Yeah, I'm one
Good.
of those weirdos that really loves lockdown, so I'm good.
So listen, let me ask you a question. Very much, this is a question that I've been having on the tip of my tongue, because I read an article a while ago about through lockdown, the concept about presenteeism, as in how long you're in the office, has gone out the window, because obviously we've all been working virtually. From my perspective, one of the challenges is for those people who you see every day in the office, you naturally kind of become a bit closer to those people who are virtual. And as a boss of a company, how do you manage those feelings? And I suppose flipping on, as an employee, what onus is on you in order to manage that? And I think lastly, to ask many questions in one go, as HR, where does that sit, and kind of how does it need to be adapted?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a massive topic, this, and I would say that all the work we're doing, I would say, yeah, 75% of it at the moment is what does the future workplace look like? What is this hybrid workplace? How do we make the choices about whether we want to go from everyone back in the office through to totally remote and everything in between? And I think, you know, there is obviously a big discussion to be had about what's right for you, your organization, etc. But then the question that you're kind of getting to is, how do you make this thing work? And there's a number of things that I think that leaders need to think about. Is, first of all, ideally, you want to make sure that the experience that your employees are having is identical wherever they're based. Now, of course, that's tough to do, but there are things that you can do to kind of level up the playing field, right? So you can look at things like, you know, do you pay people based on location, or do you pay people based on the job? Um, and we've seen both. So you've got Facebook saying, you know, if you're not going to be based near the head office, then we're probably going to pay you less, whereas Reddit are going to pay you regardless, the same regardless of where you live. Secondly, there is issues around the kind of meeting protocols. So one of the things that we see a company called Coinbase do, they say, regardless of whether you're in the office or you're at home, when we have a meeting, we do it virtually. So you might have 3 people in this meeting in the office, but they go back to their desks and they join virtually. Because we all know what it's like, you know, when you're the kind of the only one at home and you're a thumbnail on someone's computer, and then they start having sidebar conversations and you can't quite hear what's being said, and or worse, actually, sometimes it all becomes about them talking at you and they don't talk to each other. So actually kind of looking at your meeting protocols, there's stuff that you can do around your benefits. You know, are they those celebratory drinks the way that you're going to recognize people, or actually is it going to be that kind of basket of goodies going to their home? And so I think there's a number of things that we need to think about, but the critical thing, if you're going to make this work, is not actually about the employees, it's about leaders. So you, Nick, are you going to be always based in the office? Because if you are, your employees will soon cotton on to the fact that that's where the important work happens, that's where the real work happens, and they will kind of gravitate back to the office. And that might be what you want, you know. And I think sometimes we kind of have to be honest about, you know, this is our culture, this is what we want, but be prepared that if you want everybody back in the office all the time, you're going to lose good people, because we have grown to expect that we have a level of choice. It's not about whether we want to be in the office or whether we want to be at home, because I think all of us want a mix. It's whether we get personal choice or not. Now, we can talk about this, you know, how organizations are making these choices. But I think that as a leader, if you really want to make this work, then don't work in the office all the time. Do what you're saying is the way that you want your culture to be. So I think there are a number of things that leaders can do that will genuinely create a culture of much more fluid, flexible working.
Leading on from what you've just said, the head of HR or whoever that person is who kind of heads up the HR function, have they got an onus then to almost be taking their kind of CEO or whoever it is and helping them to see that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, you know, we see in leaders a real mix. There are those who have really enjoyed working from home themselves and actually seeing their families, sometimes for the first time in a long time, and who have embraced it themselves. and who genuinely see this as something that is, I was going to say differentiator, but I'm not sure it's even a differentiator in the future. I think it's going to be more hygiene factor that, you know, for you want it to be a decent place to work, then you'll offer that flexibility and choice. And then I think we have the more, you know, perhaps traditional managers who cannot wait for this all to be over so they can get everybody back in where they can see what they're doing, they can micromanage in the usual way. And that's just such a wasted opportunity, because what we've realized during this pandemic is that we actually can trust our people. You know, the vast majority of people will come to work to do a decent job. Left to their own devices, they will be as productive as they possibly can be. And they want to look out for their colleagues and they want to do the right thing by their customers. So we've proved, or employees have proved, that they are deserving of that trust. And I think if you've got managers that are saying, you know, I actually want my people back in the office, the question is, well, why? Now, there are some valid reasons for getting people together, and maybe we can come on and look at that, because I don't think it's just as simple as like everybody work from home and everything will be fine. I think there are times when it's really vital to get together. But I think if you're making a conscious decision as a leader, as a CEO, that this is part of your employment offering because it's increasingly expected, you want to have your share of the decent talent, then, you know, leaders trusting their people to behave well, to you know, to be productive, to, you know, manage in very extreme circumstances, right? You know, they've proved how innovative they are, they've proved how productive they can be, and I think that really it's inherent upon, you know, managers to recognize that trust can continue and not just resort back to old ways.
Why do you think then? Because someone else said to me that kind of they were concerned about their biggest fear being we resort back to old ways. Like, you're an expert in the world of HR and kind of people, I suppose. Why do you think that managers who have spent a year with their people outperforming maybe what they've ever done before are going to revert back?
I mean, not everybody will, because as I say, there are plenty of managers who have really, it's kind of been a light bulb for them that actually they don't need to micromanage, and they were forced into doing something which was about managing through outputs rather than time served. They had to do it, so they've had to learn. And so, you know, very often it takes a big crisis like this to kind of lead to a radical shift in behavior. But I think the reason that some will resort back to old behaviors is twofold. Firstly, I think it's because we're human beings, and, you know, if we don't kind of reflect and embed these new working practices, then it's very easy. I think actually we will revert back to old behaviors, not because we're bad people or bad managers, but because we're human. And so we will slip back into that groove because it's what we know, it's what we've always done. And what we've experienced for the last 12 months will just be a kind of a blip, and we'll just get back into that groove. But also, I think for managers who have perhaps been managing people remotely, but not being comfortable with it, we know that not seeing people, micromanaging them, is a way of holding on to more control, holding on to that power. And it's scary to let go. It's scary to kind of say, actually, I trust you to do things in a way that suits you. Perhaps might not be the way that I would do it as your manager. So it's tricky to kind of trust, isn't it? You know, it's scary because we're making ourselves more vulnerable. But ultimately, that is what leadership in the future is. It's that kind of vulnerability. It's that recognizing that we don't have all the answers, that we can't possibly control everything, that actually it's in, you know, what a great leader is about knowing each of my people, how to get the best from them, be really clear about expectations, but allowing them to find their own way of doing things. And it's that kind of that sense of we don't have to be in control. We don't have to be the biggest, strongest, most knowledgeable person in the room with all the answers, because it's just not feasible. And those are the leaders who will thrive, because suddenly they create a space where people can speak up, contribute, make a decision based on what they see as an emerging customer need at the point where they need it. They're able to respond more quickly. So it's that by being vulnerable, you will get more success, more power in a way, but it's scary in the first place.
But do you think this evolution of leadership to this more vulnerable leadership where kind of honesty is critical, and do you think we're just starting, or do you think actually kind of it's understood and we're in a kind of...
No, I don't think it's understood at all. I think we still, the leadership teams that I meet with on a regular basis, I think there is still a view that as leaders, they need to be almost superhuman, that they need to be more resilient than anyone else, they need to be more knowledgeable than anybody else, that if you show vulnerability, if you show humility, if you say things like, I don't know, what do you think? If you share your biggest failure, your biggest weakness to your colleagues, that actually is an invitation for them to attack rather than support. So I think we are a long way from leaders showing that vulnerability and that humility. And I'm not saying it's not about weakness. It's not about being ignorant, of course not. But it is about recognizing that you can't possibly sustain this idea of the superhero leader. But I think we're a long way from it. We're starting to see, this is kind of faddish phrase of psychological safety, where people are allowed to be themselves and they're allowed to be more authentic and they're allowed to make mistakes. In fact, mistakes are kind of celebrated, because if you're not making mistakes, you're not innovating. So I think we are starting to see examples, and certainly some of the leaders I work with are trying really hard, but I think we've got a hell of a long way to go to change that culture of leadership.
Let's move on a bit to the HR function. How do you think it's fared over the pandemic?
A guy who used to work for me at the BBC, he was ex SAS, right? And ex Paras. And he used to say to me that morale is nothing to do with happiness. Morale is all to do with overcoming adversity. And I think you see that with the HR profession right now, is that they have been front and center. They have been sorting out the impossible. They have pivoted so quickly and adapted so fast, and they have achieved things that actually they've been trying for years to achieve, like flexible working, online learning, dropping some key processes that people were wedded to that no one missed when the pandemic hit. So actually their sense of, whilst they're shattered and they're exhausted, but they have, I think, a renewed sense of their purpose, of the fact that they can achieve things. And so they should be, right? Because if we, let's hope to God it's a once in a lifetime crisis and opportunity, but if we don't take this opportunity as HR to make those changes happen, to redo how, we do performance and talent and learning and recruitment and leadership, if we don't take this opportunity, then we will get back into those old groove-like behaviors.
Is there momentum and is there impetus kind of to almost pick themselves up one last time in order to make sure that actually the momentum's not lost as we go into the next phase of recovery?
I think it's mixed, if I'm honest. I think there are those really smart HR people who recognize, we were getting calls from clients even June last year, the smarter clients who were saying, we can use this opportunity to radically change the way we do things. Yeah, that's amazing, because a lot of people were just still kind of on the floor at that point and almost paralyzed at that point. So I think there are those people who get it completely, and they're saying, right, how can we keep this momentum going? How can we make sure that we're bringing in a greater kind of, consumer choice within the workplace? How can we make sure that we build from a position of trusting our people? How can we make sure that we don't go back to those old processes that, that just got in the way and were bureaucratic and really didn't deliver? So you've got those types of HR people. And unfortunately, I think there are also some that are kind of like, thank God that's over and we can get back to normal. But, I'm kind of less interested in them. I'm excited by the ones who are actually, really going for it.
As we all look forward to what the future of the workplace looks like, give me one or two of your personal insights as to what we can expect to see, which maybe I haven't thought about before.
I'm not one for trying to predict the future, because I don't think any of us can. But I think there are some trends that will continue to gain momentum, because I think they are unstoppable trends. So these aren't kind of radical and new, but I think they will just grow and grow. And I alluded to one a little while ago, and that is the consumerization of the workplace. I think this idea that we are a bunch of, people that form some kind of homogenous lump, and we all go into work and we all have exactly the same experience given to us, in terms of one size fits all benefits, processes, contracts, hours of work, place of work. I think that is dead. I think, our expectations as human beings about having our needs and wants catered for, um, as consumers in our human lives, we were beginning to see that in the workplace. And I think that, again, smart organizations realize that they can tailor and provide options and customize either centrally, without trying to import too much complexity and cost, obviously, but also through the line manager and the leader. So I think that consumerization piece, I think empathetic leaders, it goes in phases, but I think empathetic leaders have made a huge comeback during this pandemic. The ones who listen and who actually genuinely want to know how their people are, what they could do to help get the best from them. I think is another trend that we'll see. We're also going to recognize that we need to think about the experience that we're creating for our people, not these kind of so-called, this is how you do reward, this is how you do performance, this is how you do learning, but what feelings are we creating for our people when they come to work for us? How do they feel? Do we want them to feel high energy? Do we want them to feel trusted? Do we want them to feel bold and innovative? There's all sorts of feelings that we might want to create working for us. And I think that sense of the experience that we wanted to create to our people, and then being braver in how we create that experience, which should be closely aligned to our brand and our customer promise. I think that's an exciting way forward.
Lucy Adams, with those thoughts and questions raiding my brain right now, it's been an honour speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, Nick, it's great to see you. It's really good to see you. Thanks for inviting me along.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.